What is going on, everybody out in hashtag nation? Paul here from hashtag sports. Ryan to the such a bad weather
You
man.
missed.
Ryan over there. Thank you, Ryan, for joining tonight. Weird Thursday night game. A little back-to-backer for the Bills, right? But Buffalo just was in the driver's seat this whole game, man, and we're going to talk about the game tonight. Buffalo wins 31-10 in, I would say, convincing fashion, but they kind of took their foot off the gas there at the end. But hey, a win is a win. Lots of injuries, though, leaving this game tonight, and we'll get into all that. But Ryan, what's looking at the game tonight? Obviously, Buffalo has just started the season, starts 2-0. Kind of put some distance between them and Miami, at least in the minds of everybody that watched this game tonight. What's the biggest takeaway from this evening?
Well, I mean, the biggest takeaway is that this Bills offense can go toe-to-toe with anyone at this point. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals, that game, their offense was better than I think most people thought. I think those, I know you and I weren't surprised by it. We talked about Kyler Murray in a fantasy football situation, right. So, folks who follow closely aren't surprised by Arizona, but a lot of people were surprised by Arizona. And then you come out and just an absolute dominant performance against a high-flying Miami Dolphins offense who ran 30 more offensive plays than the Bills tonight. They had 13 more minutes of possession in today's game. They had 10 drives and they managed one touchdown. And that speaks to what McDermott can do defensively. I think that's what Bobby Babich is bringing to this defense, is a different edge. But I think what the big takeaway for me is, at least, is through the first two games of the season, this Bills team has not been tripped up. They haven't been surprised by anybody. I think the Cardinals game was closer on the scoreboard than maybe it was from a game perspective. And tonight, I mean, it was just an absolute dominant performance. So this Buffalo team, despite the concerns that folks had coming into the year, I think this is still one of the top 5 teams in the NFL, and they have every reason to think Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, and averaging a gaudy 2.9 points per first down tonight, which I think is the most egregious stat of them all. Buffalo ended up only having 13 first downs, and you score 31 points on 13 first downs. Not only that, Josh Allen walks away with a paltry 139 passing yards on only 19 attempts. He had 13 completions. The Bills had 13 first downs, and you put up 31 points. But to me, this was not as much a game about the offense as it was about the Bills defense, that I left last week, concerned about the linebacking group and a little concerned about the secondary. And Jamarcus Ingram proved why the Bills were able to keep him around. What a game for the young man. Defensive player of the week, you think? Do you think he's going to get it?
He might get it. I mean, let's talk about the defensive side of the football. Damar Hamlin, a very quiet 10 tackles in tonight's game, right?
Well, nope, there's not there. That one was not quiet, Ryan.
The one was not quiet. Cam Lewis continues to show that he's probably the best tackler, in the secondary.
Yeah.
Cole Bishop comes in and gets a pass breakup. Mike Edwards gets some time and has a pass breakup. Just up and down this defense. Balin Spector stepped in for the injured Terrell Bernard, and I think he stepped in rather admirably. And, it's just like, they joke about it with.
Still walked away with 10 tackles.
And people joked about the Xavier Worthy pick for Kansas City, where it's like, how do they keep getting away with this? And I think defensive coordinators in the NFL have to be looking at Buffalo going, how do they keep getting away with this? Like, they lose player after player. They lose Matt Milano, they lose Terrell Bernard, and they just trot, Dorian Williams and Balin Spector out there, and they don't miss a beat. They lose, Trey White walks away. They get Rasul Douglas. It's just time and time again, it's just a wealth of talent on the defensive side of the ball. And I think for all the criticism that I've had about Sean McDermott, this is what he does to a team. He gives you a top 7 defense, and he's going to give you a solid secondary on the back end, and everybody else on the front take care of their job, and we'll be okay.
Yeah, I look at it this way, right? The Bills took their lumps last year on the defensive side of the football, and there's no rookies that you're depending on here. Like, say Jamarcus Ingram for what he is, he was on this football team last year.
Yeah,
Damar
it's his third year. Yeah.
This is an incumbent defense. So even though these are players the Bills didn't have to depend on, like quite a few players the Bills didn't have to depend on last year, it's not like they weren't in the building. They kept them around for a reason. It's also one of the reasons why the Bills are continuously one of the most poached teams in the NFL, because teams in the league, they know Buffalo is a cornerback and linebacker factory, right? Like they do a great job in that respect of finding good corners and finding serviceable linebackers. Now, of course, we don't know the extent, and nor would Sean McDermott give us any, extent on any sort of Terrell Bernard injury. It was called a pectoral injury. That is dangerous, right? When you hear that, I would imagine that if it were a torn pec, that Bernard would have been much louder about his exit out of the game. It was clear that he was not well, but I mean, we've seen guys tear pecs, and I mean, we're talking like their arms hanging down by their ankle, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, we saw Terrell Bernard, or I'm sorry, we saw who was it last year? Daquan Jones, right?
Yeah, Daquan Jones
pec last year, and I mean, I think the fact that he went into the locker room through the second quarter, and then it wasn't until after halftime that we found out he wasn't coming back.
Yeah,
I hope that that's the case. Let's hope it's a strain. I mean, Matt Milano missed 2 games, I think 2 seasons ago, with a strained pec.
Yeah.
So you kind of hope that that's best case scenario for him. And I mean, but again, out comes Balin Spector, who's been on this team for, I think this is his 3rd or 4th year now, and just a veteran without a lot of playing time, and just comes out and puts on the green dot, and off they go.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, right? Always, and I'll say this every week for the entire season, always fear the defensive end in a contract year. And Greg Rousseau is looking like a very dangerous man. And I'll be honest with you, Von looked pretty good tonight. And again, you could say whatever you want about the Dolphins' offensive line, and that's a valid concern there, or as a valid argument to make. But Von looked good last week. He looked better this week. And boy, that is fun to watch, because now you're getting to see AJ Epineza kind of move across the line, which I think makes him a more dangerous player, because Epineza definitely flashed last year, but he wasn't a player that you could really depend on snap in and snap out. Yeah. When you can move him around a bit, like in those 3rd and longs, they put him at the defensive tackle position. I love that look for him, right? Like, those are the things that you can do.
Yeah, and you see how disruptive Ed Oliver can be when he's got 2 defensive ends on either side of the line that are causing disruptions, right? I mean, he's a completely different player when he's got 2 guys that are bringing pressure on the end. And I think when we talk about, in a contract year, Rousseau, not only is he, on pace for whatever it is, 21 sacks this season, I think, through the first 2 games, because he had 3 in the first one, but he's leading to this resurgence for Von Miller, where Von doesn't have to be the guy. And I think that's taking a lot of weight off. It's the first time in his career he hasn't had to be the guy from the pass rushing perspective. And that, that entirely changes his approach to the game. And so Rousseau is a linchpin of this defense. I mean, he's emerged as a linchpin of this defense, and they're going to have to do something to keep him around, because he's obviously showing that he's critical to this defense.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt. But I mean, I guess what's so fascinating about that, right, is when you kind of look at where you could go with this defense, you're getting production out of players that don't cost you a lot of money right now. Like, Rasul Douglas is an aging player. And again, you're not hearing his name very often. Thrilled with that, couldn't be happier with that. But
and here's a stat for you, Paul, just about Von Miller. So his stats tonight, the next gen stats, he generated 4 pressures and a sack on 14 rushing matchups against Austin Jackson, and he was 2.1 second on average time to pressure. So from the time the ball snapped until he's getting credit for a pressure is 2.1 seconds. That's his best mark since 2021. So Von, is kind of back to form. And let's not forget, I mean, that was a late ACL tear. That was in the Thanksgiving game that he tore that.
Yeah.
So when you look at last season, it wasn't until, November that he was even a year removed from the surgery. So, I mean, it was completely expected that he was going to take some time to get back up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and while the defense was certainly cooking tonight, James Cook, man. And, really, when you look at the stat line, right, the obviously the touchdowns stand out, right? But again, another game of efficiency. Now, I think last week, James Cook was incredibly efficient in the first half, but Arizona made some adjustments to kind of bottle him up in the second half of that game. James Cook averaged 7.1 yards rushing tonight on only 11 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. 2 touchdowns on the ground. Yeah, 2 touchdowns on the ground.
2 touchdowns on the ground. Yep.
Yeah. So huge efficiency numbers, right? And that so far means that James Cook, if you remove the second half of last week, James Cook is averaging almost 6.5 yards a carry. That's crazy in the NFL, especially when the Bills are notoriously among the league leaders in running the ball under Joe Brady.
Yeah, I think people forget, and again, this is when you look at the game from fantasy football perspective.
Yeah,
it went under the radar last year. James Cook was a top 3 running back in the NFL in terms of efficiency numbers. Every time he touched the ball, he was getting yardage, and he was ripping off significant yardage. Mm-hmm. He was, I think he was second or third behind like a name like Breece Hall, right? When you talk about super efficient type of guy. And another guy was Devon Achane. He didn't qualify for the stat because he didn't have enough touches. But James Cook is just absolutely electric when he touches the ball. And it's so fun to watch him because he has that move where as soon as he takes the handoff, he kind of just like sticks his foot in the ground and he makes that jump cut. And that sets the entire play up for a significant run. And then besides that, let's talk about Ray Davis and the different approach that they're able to bring with Davis, right? Like Davis was super efficient tonight too. He had the one catch where he kind of got dragged down just behind the line of scrimmage, but that's not his game, right? He's not a guy who's going to catch the ball and run away from guys, but between the tackles, he was super dynamic. And I think that brings a fun element that this team was really missing last year. Like their between the tackles guy last year was Ty Johnson, right? And that's not going to get it done. They tried to bring in Leonard Fournette. He couldn't get on the roster, game day roster. Davis gives them some juice between the tackles, and that brings a totally different dynamic to what this team can do offensively. And I think that they're exploiting that in these first 2 games. I'm waiting to figure out when Vegas is going to align on James Cook and stop giving us these freebies in terms of his over-under rushing numbers, because it's been 2 weeks in a row that it's almost been disrespectful to how good he's been to what the over-under numbers have been.
Well, and Ryan, I mean, you could say the same thing about Josh Allen's passing stats, right? Josh Allen on the under has been money. Right?
Yeah,
like
first 2 games.
First 2 games. He's been money. Now, with that being said, Keon Coleman, 1 target, no reception tonight. A lot different than just a couple days ago. The opposite side of that, Khalil Shakir, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 54 yards, a long of 21. Dalton Kincaid, 4 receptions on 4 targets for 33 yards. That's probably a bit more in line for his floor the rest of the season, right?
Yeah, and you saw them manufacturing
19. Yeah, Josh only attempted 19 passes, and between that, 9 of them went to Kincaid and Shakir.
Yeah, I mean, and the 4 to Kincaid were really the only, aside from the James Cook touchdown, they were the only ones that were designed to go that way, right? All 4 of them were on those little tight end screens, little flare routes to the outside where he had 2 blockers in front of him. He just turns around, Josh puts it on his numbers, he catches and goes. Aside from the Cook touchdown, which was an absolutely beautifully drawn up play, the only guy they're manufacturing touches for at this point is Dalton Kincaid. And I think that bodes well for his floor going forward from a fantasy perspective. And we saw, how effective this offense can be when he touches the football. So they're going to continue to pump the ball to him, I think, as the season goes on.
Sure. Yeah. And, I got to call this out now. I don't know what Mario was doing. Let's just get in front of this.
You got to change the password on him.
Well, Mario's the Twitter monster. I don't go on Twitter, right? Twitter's not my thing. So Mario tweeted this out a while ago. It says Bills losing by two two Ds tonight. Sorry, y'all. I wish I knew what exactly prompted him to do this, but I do want to point out this does prove we don't delete a single tweet. We never will.
That's right. We don't.
It's just not in our character.
And you don't run from your takes.
Yeah, no, this is the consequence of having shared access to social media profiles. This is what happens. Mario is not here to defend himself tonight. I don't know if there is a defense against that. With that being said, we all know the Bills aren't going to go, undefeated. Like you're bound to lose a game eventually. If you drop one in Miami on a Thursday after just playing on Sunday, whatever, whatever. At least it was a night game. But one thing I noticed, right? A lot of players were falling all over the field. There was slipping constantly on that field tonight. I don't remember that being a thing, but do you remember that being a thing? Because it really looked like players struggled to get their footing tonight.
Well, I think they mentioned a few different times during the pregame and during the broadcast that it's extremely humid, and we know what that can do to grass and turf as the night goes on and it stays humid, and now there's no sun to kind of draw out that humidity. So, I mean, I think that probably had a lot to do with it. Typically, the field's not in that bad of shape. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Bills definitely struggled with that, and I mean, it's kind of, you got to be ready for that, right? You've got to have the right cleats, because clearly the Dolphins had the right cleats to play in that type of element. And I think from a equipment perspective, you've got to be a little bit more prepared than that.
So Josh Allen is 11-1 against the Dolphins. Also, the Bills' average margin of victory is 14 points, I think. It's like 14 and a half points.
Yeah.
Just an absurd beating of this Dolphins team every time. And unfortunately, we have to talk about it. Tua with another horrific, catastrophic hit. I don't know why it seems to be against the Bills, but there's only so much that I think the fan base is going to be able to take of having to see things like that. And I think you just have to be realistic about where you are as a person versus where you are as an athlete. And you just can't keep seeing a kid make decisions like that. And if Tua's out indefinitely, the Dolphin season is over, right? Like it'll be over for them. They'll scratch to maybe a 500 record. Maybe McDaniel's pretty creative, but Skylar Thompson is very limiting. I know they pulled a rabbit out of their hat, a couple years ago, but you're not going to be able to do that again. And you really have to wonder if this is the end of the road for Tua. I would hope that people get in his ear and say, listen, dude, there's more to life than just football. This is bad. You can't keep doing this.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is not the fun part of what it is we do and breaking down, post game stuff. And I mean, this is scary, right? Like it's scary to see, his hands do what his hands did. And he kind of, froze up after the hit. And it was really similar to what we saw, 2 seasons ago when he was in Cincinnati, not too far after that Bills game. I mean, there was an interview that he did during training camp with Dan Le Batard, and they asked him, did you think about retiring? And he was pretty open and honest about it, where he said, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conversation with my family, and, it sounded like his mother was, on the side of, you got to think about yourself and walk away from this. And, he's got a 2-year-old son. He's got a wife. I mean, he's got to think about, let's forget about the football perspective. Let's forget about the fantasy football perspective. Like, you've got to think about the human being. And at a certain point, like you said, Paul, I mean, someone has to step in, right? I mean, whether it's the Dolphins, whether it's the NFL from a PR perspective, like someone has to come in and just say, listen, say what you want about the kid, say what you want about whether he's a good quarterback, a bad quarterback, whether he's worth the contract or not. He's a gamer. He's going to go out and play until someone stops him from doing this. So if you continue to leave it up to him, he's probably not going to make the right decision. So somebody has to step in, because I'm not sure what the critical mass is with this type of thing, but you can't keep trotting him out there and letting him take shot after shot like this. And maybe listen, from a salary cap perspective, again, you get into the gamesmanship of it. You don't necessarily want this to happen, but maybe the NFL just needs to come to the Dolphins and say, listen, let's forget the contract, right? Like, let's figure something out so that you guys aren't on the hook for this, because we can't keep watching this happen. And, and I don't know. I mean, that's early indications, but from a football perspective, again, best wishes to Tua. Hopefully he's back, at least in the public eye soon, and we can see that he's doing okay. From a football perspective, the Dolphins probably need to think about like a Ryan Tannehill, right? Like, they need to think about somebody other than Skylar Thompson, because they've let Mike White walk, right? He's now with the Bills.
He's now with the Bills, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, they don't have another guy that they can kind of look at and go, okay, well, quarterback battle, we're just going to go with the hot hand type of situation and try to patch this thing together because we're good enough to get into the wild card. But Ryan Tannehill's still out there, and he's openly said that he's not going to sign with a team unless it's a starting job situation. Maybe there's a reunion on the horizon here, and Tannehill comes back.
Well, Mike White is still available to Miami because he is on Buffalo's practice squad. So, I mean, he could sign back with Miami.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So that is
unless
very,
Buffalo,
very possible.
unless Buffalo likes him enough. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Unless they like him enough to carry him on the roster.
Sonny, hello from Alaska. This is a complete team. Loving this young defense. It's also great to see Von Miller have 2 sacks. One again tonight. Yeah, Von on pace for 17 sacks tonight, or 17 sacks on the season. Certainly can't be too shy about that. I love Von's increasing snap count. That to me tells me that we're on the right track here. I felt really careful with him week 1, but he looked explosive. He looked powerful. Increased snap count tonight. I think we'll probably continue to see that. But Ryan, I mentioned it last week. We're not seeing Buffalo go through that constant, what's it? The Chinese fire drill substitutions, right? On that defensive line. They've got their guys, and they're letting their guys play. Like, they're really not going through that defensive line rotation like we've so commonly seen under McDermott. Now, is that a McDermott thing? Is that a Babbage thing? Or is that we just don't have, we're not as deep in those positions anymore as we've tried to be? Because we saw a couple years ago, they tried to get real stout at defensive tackle, and they spent a lot of money there, and I don't think they got the return they were looking for. So are we done seeing that kind of rotation? Or, was Babbage some sort of influence to say, listen, there's no reason. These guys are good. They're fine. Let's go.
Well, I think one thing that we forget in this conversation is that they're down 2 defensive linemen that are on the active roster, right? Jawan Smoot's hurt and Javon Solomon's hurt. And I think that hurts the rotation quite a bit when you're carrying 7 and you don't have 2 going into the game. You really can't have a really tough rotation. They're rotating 4 at the defensive end position. They're rotating 4 at the, defense, the interior defensive line position. And I think when Smoot and Solomon come back, they probably find themselves in there. I don't think they want necessarily to be running too much at the defensive end position. I think they'd rather see Solomon in those pass rush situations. But hey, one of the bright spots tonight again was the rookie Carter. I mean, I thought he played really well opposite Ed Oliver on the Oliver sack of Tua. Yeah. I mean,
he was inactive last week. Was he inactive last week?
He was inactive. No, he was not inactive. He played. He didn't have many snaps, but he was. I think he did play because Smoot and Solomon, I think, have been the only 2 defensive linemen that have been inactive so far. So, Carter playing well as a rookie, I think, is what they wanted. And pairing him up with that Oliver, I think, works really well, right? Because then you can have Daquan Jones play that other rotation. And then in critical situations, you see both of them on the field at the same time. But I think they're running those pairings nicely. And I think that's more Babbage, to answer your question. I mean, because it's kind of been haphazard under McDermott, but there seems to be a rhyme and reason to the rotations this year. And I think that has to do with Babbage knowing what guys he wants playing with who and in what situations.
Another night, another Josh Allen fumble. This is, I think Josh, along with James Cook, because I'll believe it until, I won't believe it till I see it. James Cook just has a reputation for fumbling the football in the NFL. It's just what it is. Teams know they can get it on the ground with him, but Josh continues to be kind of his own worst enemy there. I know it's another fumble on the stat sheet. Anything concerning for you there? Because again, 2 games, 2 fumbles.
Yeah, no, I mean this one was different, right? Last game he held on to the ball too long. It was one of his own creation. This one was just on the exchange, right? I mean, it was a snap. It was a shotgun situation. McGovern got it on him, and it was one of those. I think he just picked his head up a little early on the read, and he kind of closed his hands before he was supposed to close his hands. It bounced in front of him. He picked it up. He tried to make a play with it, and almost made a play with it. Almost got the first down, but no, I mean I'm not concerned with it. I think the knee-jerk reaction on Twitter was, oh, there's that hand, that hurt hand that he's got that's rearing his ugly head. Well, it went off the other hand. It went off his throwing hand when the snap
That's why I asked you.
Yeah. So I mean, it was not anything that I'm concerned with. I think just Josh being Josh, and he's antsy. He's looking to make a play, and ultimately no harm, no foul, because it wasn't a lost fumble. So
right. So Buffalo ends up going into the first half, touchdown, punt, field goal, touchdown, and then the offense doesn't score for the entire rest of the game. You have a Tyler Bass missed field goal, which I know angered you because you were looking for a backdoor cover on the over. So the Tyler Bass missed field goal, I'm sure, rang you up a little bit.
I think it got blocked. I think I saw someone say it got blocked, miss. But it was a bad kick.
Miss.
Yeah,
it was a bad miss. But Jamarcus Ingram brings that touchdown in. Really nice play. You had mentioned, you're like, I didn't realize how big he was.
Yeah, he's 6'2", 190 when you look at him in the stat in the depth chart. I mean, that's a big boy playing boundary corner in the NFL, right? Like that's a big dude out there.
Yeah, and Buffalo kept him around for a reason. Like you just have to have faith. And he bounced up and down a little bit. But I guess, the more I look at this team, right? Buffalo comes out and they score 31 this week. Last week they scored 34. You have to imagine that they're going to be able to put a hurting on the Jaguars, right? Because that's the next game's 4:30 on September 23rd. It's 4:30 game. And that one's in Buffalo. So I imagine they've got a chance to put up another 30 burger, pretty easily. But then come the Ravens. You're at Baltimore, and that's where I think things change for at least the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited about this. I was a little worried about the beginning of the season because you run into some tough teams. But I mean, you've only given up 38 points as a defense, and you've scored 65. Like, good on you, right? Because I just don't remember feeling confident about the Bills' offense this early in the season last year. Like, maybe I'm just misremembering that, but it's a totally different approach. 9 guys had targets tonight, and you only threw the ball 19 times. Like, think about that, right? Like, 9 different players had targets. You threw it 19 times. That's wild.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'll throw it out there because this is why I sometimes jump in, because Garn in the chat stole my stat that I was getting ready to drop on you. The Bills are the only team in the AFC so far this season to score 30 points, and they've done it twice. So this is a team that's a high-powered offense, but they've got a tough stretch ahead, right? Like the Jaguars is probably their last game where you pencil it in, and that you think that they probably should walk away fairly easy on that, because then they go to Baltimore, to Houston, and then they have to go to New York to play the Jets.
Right.
Then they get a bit of a reprieve where they come home against the Titans, and they go to Miami, or I'm sorry, to Seattle, and then they get Miami at home. So, this is a kind of again, the Jaguars are one last shot. They get them on an extended bye because they played Thursday night this week. The Jaguars play on Sunday. But then after that, it's a tough 4-game stretch. I think that's the stretch where you're going to figure out what this Bills team is made of. The hope is that you're going into it 3-0.
Sure.
So you can come out of it, even if you come out of it at 500, you're coming out it's a 3-game stretch. So, you come out 2-1 or even 1-2, and you're still probably leading the division. So, this is a tough stretch that you're going to find out what this team's made of on this. But yeah, I mean, the offense, I'm not worried about the offense not scoring late on this one. I mean, it was a clear throttle down situation, right? The Jamarcus Ingram pick 6, you immediately come back, and then the Tua injury. And I think everything clicked into reality for Buffalo, where it's like, okay, this offense isn't anything even a little bit to worry about unless Tua's at the helm. And I think that's a show of respect for Tua. Both, we're going to throttle down after the injury, and also like we're no longer even mildly afraid of this team at this point. And they just kind of took the foot off the gas.
Right. Yeah, the Bills were still running plays, So if you look at the play log, so the next drive was 5 plays, took 3 minutes off the clock, and only had to gain 20 yards. And then they punt off that drive, and then the following play they missed the field goal, but that was 7 plays, 14 yards, and took 4 minutes off the clock. You know, so they were really in grind mode, and that's where you saw Ray Davis get a little bit more burn. So don't be shocked by his stat line. It is not impressive. What was its stat line? I think he had 29 yards rushing. I mean, on I think 9 attempts. So it's 9 for 29. So not an impressive stat line, but look at when he was carrying the ball,
Right.
It's a hard time to run the football.
It was essentially garbage time.
That
he was really getting the bulk of his carries. And, he had a 10-yard carry that was really nice. Beyond that, it was 8 for 19 was his stat line. So nothing to write home about. But again, I think he's not going to be the guy that's going to run for, 4 or 5 yards at a time. He's that between the tackles guy. And if he's averaging 3.5 yards a carry, I think they're going to be more than happy with that, at least for this season in his rookie year.
So Tyreek Hill walks away with the third most targets on the team tonight. 6 targets, 3 receptions for 24 yards. You have to imagine that's burning his ass. Something fierce.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that recently on a live, he listed the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL as Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to try and do this in order. Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, Lamar, and then who else did he list? Baker Mayfield. And there was one more, and I forget who it was. None of them being Josh Allen, obviously, right?
Right.
Obviously. And it was just one of those circumstances, right, where I saw that and I go, man, I know that this team doesn't say that stuff like that bothers them a little bit, but I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, okay, we know how this is going to go, right? Like, come on. And if you're Tyreek, now you're in a situation you want out, right? Like you've seen this movie before, right? You want out, and he is a noisy player. So absolutely anything could happen in that Dolphins locker room because he is a noisy player when he's unhappy.
Yeah. I mean, here's a fun stat. Todd Clausen from Rochester shared it. Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 24 yards tonight. Waddle, 4 catches for 41 yards. Jamarcus Ingram, 2 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. Can't like that. If you're the Dolphins, you can't like that at all.
No.
And I think this is twofold. Tyreek Hill is going to get, like you said, very vocal. And it's going to do 2 things. It's really going to turn up the pressure on Greer to find a solution at the quarterback position. If Tyreek Hill's not able to go, the other thing it does, it's going to ratchet up the heat on Mike McDaniel, because Tua was his guy, right? Tua was the guy that he put every ounce of his weight behind. He can run this offense. He needs to get the bag. He needs to get paid because I need my guy out there. And now you're in a situation where, you're legitimately questioning whether you're ever going to see him on a football field again in shoulder pads and a helmet.
Yeah.
And now the pressure's on Mike McDaniel because there's expectations with this team, right? They went all in. They put a lot of money on Hill. They went out and got defensive players in Ramsey, and they re-upped Holland, and they went out and got these guys that they think were good enough to get them over the hump. And now you've got to manufacture, offensive genius, right? Like we've seen Kyle Shanahan do it year in and year out with the island of misfit toys at running back and at quarterback. Let's see it because you're the disciple of it. So
and McDaniel's had a couple. Well, McDaniel's has had a couple of those guys, right?
Right.
Like Jeff Wilson's a perfect example, and Jeff Wilson didn't run the ball tonight. Like
No.
Achane has an ankle sprain, yet Jeff Wilson didn't run the ball tonight. Like that tells you an awful lot of the condition of Jeff Wilson in the
Yeah,
offense, right? You
Achane
should be
came
able
in
to
as a
depend on
game
him.
time decision,
Yeah, I
and
ran the ball
in
22
garbage time,
times.
he's still getting touches. He winds up touching the ball 29 times. Right?
Yeah,
That can't happen. Right?
No.
I mean, it just can't happen. You've got to be able to shut that guy down after Tua goes out. You just got to know when to fold him in that situation, and that's irresponsible by McDaniel. The end of the half, I know you weren't watching at the end of the half, but it was unreal how he managed his timeouts and the clock on that. I mean, he had 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning to go down the field and get a touchdown, and they wound up settling for 3 points. He let a lot of time run off the clock. Like, he looked every bit as shell-shocked in that first half as his team did. And then in the second half, he had no answer. I mean, he just had no answer for what this Bills defense did. And we talked about it in the group chat before halftime, right? This is going to be a game of adjustments at halftime. That's what the Cardinals game was, and that's what McDermott and Babbage have done defensively over the last couple of seasons. Let's let them do their thing offensively in the first half. If we can stop it, we'll stop it. If we can't, we're going to adjust at halftime, and we're going to give the ball to the centaur that we have a quarterback and let him go do his thing. And then we're going to play defense because we figured out what they're doing. We talked about it at halftime. We made adjustments. We're going to come out and shut them down. And McDaniel, the offensive genius, has not had an answer for it. The last, I know he hasn't been around for all of them, but we talked about it. The last 12 times that these teams have played against each other, 1-11. It's a 14.5 point differential. It's +8 on the turnovers for the Buffalo Bills. And then the other part of that stat, which is telling, is during that same stretch. So the last 12 games, during that same stretch, Miami Dolphins are 44-31 against the rest of the NFL in that stretch, where they're 1-11 against the Bills.
Yeah.
This is turning into what
Bills
New
Patriots
England was to Buffalo.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Bills Patriots. Yeah. It sure feels that way, right? It's nice to be on the other side of that. Yeah.
And they asked Teron Armstead about it. They asked
Armstead
about it after the game. Like, how do you guys feel about continuing to lose to this team? And he's like, I hate it. I'm tired of it. And, it can't continue to happen. We've got to be better, but it's like a slow moving freight train. And they just can't get out of the way for whatever reason every time they play each other.
Well, and if you were watching Razor Sharp Picks, Joe and Ryan talked about this game, and Ryan, you had a parlay that you recommended, or prop. Would this be considered a prop or a parlay?
It's a parlay because it was a 2-leg play. Yeah, I played Josh Allen under 245.5 because I thought that was a high line based on his first game and what this offense looks like. And I played James Cook over 60.5 yards because I talked about it earlier. I thought it was disrespectful. And that was +249. I felt like that was easy money. And it turned into be pretty easy money as soon as James Cook ripped off a 49-yard touchdown run where Jordan Poyer looked like he was 40 years old out there trying to play safety in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, that was as bad of an angle as I've seen him take the last 2 years of Buffalo playing bad angles. I mean, it was awful. He looked like a 40-year-old out there trying to run James Cook down, and Cook just ran by him. So,
well, and that line for Cook on the over/under, that may not move all that much. Cook only has 78 yards. Now, mind you, he's averaging an incredible amount per carry, right? But from a total volume perspective, you might get a couple more weeks out of these relatively low yardage totals out of James Cook. You might get lucky there. But we want to talk about our sponsor, BetDSI. So, hey, everybody, listen, what we want to do is we want to make sure that football is more than just having fun while you're watching it. We want to make sure that you're living the game, living every moment, and you're ready to take that passion to the next level. You do that with betdsi.eu. BetDSI has been around for over 25 years. They know how to treat real fans like us with the best odds, fastest payouts, and a platform that's as solid as our defense. Whether you're betting on the Bills to dominate the AFC or making those crucial live bets during the game, BetDSI has everything you need to make your picks count. And something special just for hashtag sports listeners, sign up today with promo code HTAG, and BetDSI will hook you up with a 120% bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000 extra cash to back the Bills the right way. Don't wait. Head over using promo code HTAG to betdsi.eu and start turning your Bills knowledge into big wins. BetDSI is where the real Bills fans win. You can find the link to BetDSI in the description of this video along with that promo code. Ryan, the betting favorite tonight was Miami, and I did not look at what the live lines were for this game, but I have to imagine at halftime they were pretty laughable, right? Like I kind of have to imagine because the game was at halftime. I mean, 24-10 in a relatively dominating fashion. It's not like this was, it's not like this game was ever really in question. I mean, I understand Tua goes out, throws an interception his first drive. Buffalo scores a touchdown. Miami answers with a touchdown. Buffalo punts, feels good. Tua interception. Buffalo does the Buffalo thing and kicks a field goal following, an opportunity to put, an opportunity to kind of start to put the game away early. Miami comes back with a punt. Buffalo touchdown. Miami out on downs. Buffalo touchdown. So when Miami was going out on downs relatively early in this game, did that tell you the way that McDaniels was going to try and fight to win this game? He wanted to protect every possession possible. Is that the way you felt about it? Do you think that was just necessity?
I felt like it was a little bit of hubris actually on his part. I mean, I thought the first fourth down that he went for and didn't convert, he wasn't, if I remember correctly, he wasn't much past midfield. And I thought that was early in the game.
There's 4th and 2 on the Buffalo 45.
Yeah. So he was 5 yards into over midfield. I thought that was early to go with as close as the game was at that point. And in the situation that they were in, I could see maybe coming to the line, seeing if you can get him to jump off sides, but then punting it away. Buffalo had an opportunity early in the first quarter. They went for it on 4th down on their touchdown drive. That was the play they scored with Cook on, was a 4th down play. They had another opportunity in their second possession on their own 40, and it was 4th and 1. And I saw some chatter on Twitter where they wanted them to go for it. But I you know how hard I am on McDermott when it comes to those types of things. I just didn't think game script determined that. I thought it was hubris from McDaniel. I thought he could go out there and pick up 2 yards, because what's 2 yards when I've got this offense? And it bit him. And I think that put him in a really bad spot. I mean, listen, this thing was on ESPN. It was a 92% win probability for Buffalo at halftime. Right. Yeah. Like that's as dominant a performance as you can give in the first half when you're at 92% win percentage. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just McDaniel thinking that he could, get 2 yards. What's 2 yards? It's not that big of a deal. And it backfired on him. And then from that point forward, the rest of it was necessity, right? He was chasing after that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think at some point you look at, the skeletons in the closet and you say, I can't let this team beat me again. And we as Bills fans have been there, right? Where,
sure.
You're battling in a game and you're like, we can't, you look behind you and you see, this lineage of losses and you're like, we cannot let this team beat us again. And you start doing things that maybe you probably shouldn't. You get a little bit outside yourself because, giving up a possession at midfield, for this offense, the game's over, right? Like, and again, I know that we get pretty critical about McDermott being relatively conservative. Last week, I think we saw that where they kicked the field goal to go up 6, where the joking term is the field goal of death, right?
Yep.
That's the joking term about it. But Joe brought up a great point. Joe's like, hey, listen, that distance by kicking the field goal is now distance that they have to cover to score a touchdown. Right? Like you're shortening the field, especially with these kickoff rules. So maybe the field goal of death isn't really as big a thing anymore. It might actually be more strategy now and play to the advantage of a team versus, like, hey, listen, we're just going to go for it because, now with the kickoff rule, man, short fields, the field's short this year with these kickoff rules. It really is. So you're going to see, probably higher scores. You're going to see more scoring drives. That's, I think, what's going to happen is the points per drive is going to increase, which is what the NFL is looking for. Now, does that play into the Bills' advantage? Well, here it does, because defensive-minded coaches have kind of been on the outs for quite some time in the NFL. And now you're going to shorten the field, and it's like, oh, how the turntables have turned. Right?
Yeah.
But doesn't that counterintuitive measure of hiring a defensive coach, you waited it out. Now, doesn't it feel like there's some advantage shifting back to defensive-minded coaches?
Well, what I'll say is I think Sean McDermott giving up play calling duties on the defense has been a really good thing for his ability as a head coach. I've been, hypercritical of Sean McDermott as a head coach. I'll never question him as a defensive guy, but what we saw tonight was growth from Sean McDermott, and what played out in their first offensive possession, 4th and 3 inside opponent territory, leaves the offense out there. It's like, okay, Sean, all right. And then he calls a timeout. And it's like, all right, we're going to do this again, right? We're going to kick a field goal after the timeout. But no, he runs the offense back out there. And not only does he run the offense back out there, it seems as though he just gave he gave Brady the ability to call what he wanted to call. You never would have seen a play like that from Sean McDermott last season. It was the James Cook. He starts to the right, comes back across the left. Allen rolls to the right, draws the entire defense. James Cook catches the ball and waltzes in for the touchdown. That was growth from Sean McDermott, because last year, I don't think Sean McDermott goes for it. And the reason for that, I think, is because he would have been concerned for the defense, right? His job's not to be concerned for the defense anymore. His job is to trust that Babich is going to have the defense ready to go. Yeah. Which is why he kicked the field goal last week. He said it in the post game. He kicked the field goal because he wanted his defense he wanted to give the defense a chance to finish the game off. And so he kicked the field goal. He went up 6, forced Kyler to go all the way down the field and get a touchdown. And this week it was, I'm going to trust my defense to play defense. I'm going for, at that point in the game, at least, I'm going for the kill shot, right? I'm going for the touchdown. Brady, call up your best play, and we're still going for it, even though I called a timeout. That's growth from Sean McDermott. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he's given up play calling duties and the fact that he has such a good grasp on a defensive concept, right? Like, he knows what the defense is going to do before they do it. He may not know what to do offensively to counter, but he knows what the defense is going to do. He can give that insight, but he's able to do it because he's focusing on the full team, not just on the defense. And I think that's a big dichotomy shift for him this season, to where it should start to pay dividends. Now, let's just hope he can start managing his timeouts a little better. But,
even with the Bills up 21 points, I still was mad at how he uses timeouts. And that shouldn't matter at all, right? Yeah. Like, that just doesn't matter at all. But I still was getting frustrated.
Well, he does those, and he does that. He did that at the end of the first half too. He did those Kodak timeouts twice. Those ones where he calls the timeout to get
a look
at the defense. And I say that because that's what he calls them. Supposedly, is he calls them Kodak timeouts, where they line up, wants to see what the offense comes out in, calls a timeout so he can make an adjustment. So he's still doing that thing. But that was at the end of the first half. He knew he wasn't going to get the ball back with any earnest time left on the clock for the offense. But yeah, I mean, I think if he can learn to challenge when he needs to challenge and call timeouts, I think he's doing pretty good with the 4th downs lately, which is a pleasant breath of fresh air for those of us who want them to be hyper aggressive, because it's like you have a really good defense, and that's when you're supposed to be hyper aggressive on offense. And you have a centaur at quarterback, which helps. So
I want to just address the masses early, right? So let's just assume that probably fair to assume Terrell Bernard, let's say he takes next week off, right? But
just on that, Paul, just so you're aware. So Banged Up Bills on Twitter did find the play where he thinks it happened. Kyle's really great at the injury stuff. He thinks he found when it happened. It was early in the first quarter. Bernard played for 3 more snaps after that, and actually had 2 tackles, and then asked off the field. So I think hopefully that's a good sign. I mean, I don't think he's playing 3 more snaps with a torn pec. So hopefully that says more to a strain. But he's probably going to miss Jacksonville. But again, it's a long bye week, right? It's a short bye week for them, right? Like, they got 10 days to get ready and get healthy for Jacksonville, who has a dogfight this weekend in their game. So, I think if that's a tough Cleveland team, they're going to beat them up. I think it's going to be a kind of a slugfest. Hopefully that helps Bernard, but I would probably assume he's going to miss Jacksonville. They don't need him for Jacksonville. Get him ready for Baltimore.
So let's just settle the debate now. Are you going to go out and buy a Joe Andreessen jersey in preparation for his appearance as Terrell Bernard's replacement? Or do you think it's going to be a combination of Nicholas Morrow and Balen Spector?
It's going to be Morrow and Spector, and I think
Yeah.
they're gonna have Andreessen active, right? And that's going to be the roster spot that they give, unless I mean, there's a lot of things that could change, right? Smoot, if he's healthy and he's ready to go, if Solomon's healthy and ready to go, I mean, either of those guys, I could absolutely see them activated over Andreessen. They don't need Andreessen if Spector is playing the way he's playing, and Spector played really good tonight, right? Like he played like he could be a starter, and then nothing changes behind Spector because Morrow's still there. What does Andreessen bring to this roster? Now, again, if Smoot's hurt, if Solomon's hurt, let's bring in Andreessen because it's another big body in the box. But I think we'll see how practice goes for this week. And then obviously everything changes if Bernard goes on IR, short, 4-week IR or something like that. Then Andreessen probably plays, but I think I hope that they activate him because I would like to see him in Buffalo against the Jags. I think that'd be a really cool moment. But from a necessity standpoint, a personnel standpoint, I'm not sure where he fits in this roster, even if he is active.
Yeah, I think Andreessen kind of put the Bills in sort of an odd situation because he became almost uncuttable. Right. Because if you cut him, you're going to lose him. So you almost had to roster him and then make him inactive for a little bit. Right. Because he still becomes a risk that if you need the roster spot later, I think he's probably one of the first players you try and waive to move to your practice squad mid-season. Right. If the roster shakes up, that you need a spot. And I know Bills fans aren't going to want to hear that, but he put them in a bad situation. That he almost had to be rostered. And, unfortunately, he's been inactive, which is not exciting for a player, but he is still rostered. So, the opportunity for him to dress is there every single week. But I think it's sort of a very specific series of circumstances you would need. Terrell Bernard going out sure helps his case. And I would love to see Andreessen dress. The crowd would go crazy for him in Buffalo to see him dress. And I hope he gets that opportunity. But I wouldn't expect him to be replacing Terrell Bernard. Balen Spector played phenomenal tonight. I don't see any reason to question that would be what happens moving forward, especially against the Jags. I think Spector would be a good fit against this Jags offense. So I'm
best
good.
Case scenario,
I'm good there.
Best case scenario, he slides into Spector's role, which was
rotational anyway.
It was nothing last week, right? Because Bernard was healthy. So he'll be in Spector's role next week if he's active. And that is, if Spector goes down, we're going to throw him out there. But let's not get it twisted, right? Like if Joe Andreessen is your starting middle linebacker, like that's a problem in today's league. Like
it's a wonderful
story. He did really well in preseason. It's a great story, but like he's a 26-year-old rookie. Like, let's not get too ahead of ourselves in terms of what he could bring to the football team, unless he comes out and shows it, which I think would be a cool story.
Right, he's 24 for the record, but I think sometimes we get, as fans, we love the story, And from a development standpoint, the preseason game was such a shot in the arm. Him making the roster was such a shot in the arm to the fan base. God, they loved it. It was a story for days, and it should be. It should be something that's celebrated, right? We absolutely should celebrate that. You're asking a bit too much of him to expect him to stick and, step up for Terrell Bernard. If he were active tonight, Balen Spector still gets put in over Joe Andreessen.
But Garn brings up a good point. Like, it's nice to have linebacker depth that doesn't include the corpse of AJ Klein, right? Like that's a good thing. Like gun to your head, Paul. Would you rather have Andreessen or AJ Klein?
Andreessen.
I mean, it's Andreessen, right? So you're in a better situation this year than you were last year. Without having to call AJ Klein as he packs for a family vacation to wherever he was planning on going. I mean, that's, and then, oh, by the way, now go cover Travis Kelce.
So who wears the green dot without Bernard? Who you got to put the sticker on somebody, Ryan? Who are you doing it?
It's probably Spector. He's been in this defense for the last 4 seasons now. I think Dorian Williams is not at all. I mean, they're holding up neon signs on the sidelines for Dorian Williams, so he knows where to line up from a scheme perspective. So it's Spector. Let's not forget, Spector was in that middle linebacker battle last season when they lost Edmonds and had to figure out who their starter was. Spector was first man up in that rotation, and then he got injured, which opened the door for Bernard to come in and kind of take that job and run with it. So they trust Spector to wear that green dot. I think it'll be him.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Morrow did play that role in Chicago in 22.
Philadelphia.
It was in Philly in 23.
I think it was, yeah.
So, I mean, the experience is definitely there, but I think if
too new.
If you got to green dot somebody, I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, Morrow is probably still learning the defensive scheme at this point. I don't think he's ready to be a green dot.
Aaron Clark, give the kid a chance to turn him into the defensive Christian Wade.
Well, Christian Wade never made the 53, so
no, he sure didn't.
Andreessen's ahead of him in that aspect, at least.
Yeah. But think of, it's funny to look at it, right? And you're like, oh, great, another season without, Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. I remember how well this went last time, even if the defense gives up 7 more points than they have the last couple of weeks, I still feel fine. I can't believe I can say that. I still feel fine.
Yeah, I mean, in today's NFL, right, and especially when Josh Allen's your quarterback, if you're giving up fewer than 20 points, you absolutely should win this football game. Right?
Yeah.
Like that should be elementary when Josh Allen is your quarterback. 20 points held is enough to win the football game. And that's the philosophy that they need to operate in. Some of it's going to be through turnovers. Some of it's going to be through just, guys stepping up and making a play like we've seen, the first 2 weeks. But you need to shoot for 20 points, and that wins the football game. I mean, if you go back and you can do it as an exercise if you're curious, but go back through the scores of last week's game and how many times 21 points would have won it. And you'd be surprised at how many times 21 points would have won a football game last week.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit on the Josh Allen doesn't have a hurt hand thing. Again, I know we brought it up earlier that Josh Allen's fumble wasn't going off the hand. I said in the post game, I was like, that's how you break your hand, right? You land, you break. That's how you break your hand. And there are a lot of little bones in there, so I cannot be convinced his hand isn't broken. Like, you can't tell me.
I don't know if it's broken. The hand. I think he might have broken one of his fingers because they showed it. They showed he had it taped. They had it taped. It was his middle and ring were taped. On that hand. So two
rushes for 2 yards, unceremonious Josh Allen rushing stats. Panic.
No.
You panic?
No. I mean, because the games where
there was no reason for him to run.
Yeah, the games he runs, it's the chaos Josh theory, right? And it's the just like, I have to take this game over and do it myself. And he didn't need to do anything himself tonight with his hyper efficient as James Cook was, as the defense was flying around, 3 turnovers. Like, no, there was no reason for him to run it. But I think it is telling that there was no reason for him to run it tonight, and he didn't. Right, like 2 seasons ago, that wouldn't have been.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't have mattered.
He would have been running all over the place against this Miami defense and taking hits and all that stuff, and showing restraint, man. Like our boy is growing up when it comes to being responsible with his body and the football. So,
well, listen, he's got to take care of his body now that he's the 12th highest paid quarterback in the league. I'm sure he's got something to say about that.
Well, and he's out in the public spotlight a little bit more, and I think he's probably enjoying the attention and all that, and all that stops if you stop playing football. So he also probably seems Cam Newton out there making a fool out of himself with all those shots that he took when he was playing. He's like, I don't want to wind up like that guy wearing weird hats and stuff, breaking down flag football games.
It's the fall from grace is pretty tragic sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, no, Garn, he did slide tonight. Tonight. So that's, hey, he tried to slide last week and kind of took a shot that he probably should have taken. And I was really worried that was going to be like, fine, I'm done sliding then. But no, he slid again tonight. So good on him.
That wasn't really a shot. Like the guy. Come on.
It was compared.
The guy tackled him like an outfielder fields a ground ball. Like he got down to a knee. But
considering the flag that Buffalo got early in the game.
I know, right?
It's kind of like you gave him that one. You got to give us this one kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a makeup call there. I don't think it was that, but there was they didn't flag that, did they? They hit on Josh when he slid. They didn't flag that.
They didn't flag that, but they flagged Douglas on the hit on Kyler that he didn't even touch him.
So no. There was a makeup call later in the game. I don't remember what it was, but I remember going, yeah, we're even. Yeah, we're square because we're square. I don't remember what it was, but the refs got us even before the end of the game. All right, Ryan. So that should take us to the end of the evening. Looking at Jacksonville, looking forward. Obviously, Bills fans, enjoy your Sunday.
Oh man,
it's a non-bye week.
It's red zone day. Finally, I was at the game last week. The Bills played on Thursday, and it is red zone, and it's the most beautiful 7 hours of uninterrupted football. Red zone is arguably the greatest creation of all of mankind, and I cannot wait to just absolutely make a monstrosity of my Sunday by watching football all day.
Ryan, we need to get you a hobby, brother. We need to get you a hobby.
Listen, football's a hobby, man. Fantasy football, football gambling, it's all tied in together. It's all it's fun, man.
Well, and we want to make sure that we thank our sponsors, Mr. Rogers Homes, our Arizona relocation specialist. If you're looking for an income property, if you're looking to relocate to warmer weather, go talk to Sean at Mr. Rogers Homes. His link and his relocation guide is in the description of this video. And of course, thank you to BetDSI. Also, you can find the link to them in our description and then use promo code HTAG for a 120% match up to $1,000 and go use that free money on some of Ryan's ridiculous parlays and props that he's actually doing not so terrible in.
Yeah.
So go check out Razor Sharp Picks. That's on Wednesdays, as I was corrected as per the last show. That is on Wednesday evenings. And of course, you can catch all the shorts on the hashtag channel. And also, Ryan, just an FYI, we started a Razor Sharp Picks YouTube Shorts channel. So awesome. All those will be chopped up into shorts. I think we had like 30 plus shorts from your last episode.
I also saw them on the TikToks today. So
yeah. It will be on the TikToks. Yep. We'll be on the TikToks before it gets banned. Got to use it before it gets banned.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Banned. It's not getting banned. It's okay. All right. That takes care of it for us. Oh, wait, Ryan. This is you're going to be part of a hashtag tradition. So Mario didn't do it last week, but there was a roast session that we used to do after every Bills win. I don't think you've ever been a part of this, if I'm remembering correctly. Have you ever been a part of the roast session? All right. No. So it is 2 minutes where you just kind of let the chat do what the chat does. And they get the opportunity to say pretty much anything about us that they want. And then we read it on screen. It's normally a pretty fun time. Let me just pull up the chat here and we'll get cruising. So we'll start 2 minutes on the clock. I'll let everybody know when it starts. And let's go.
I'm sure this will go well.
What oh yeah, well, fine. All right, so we will start the clock now for the roast session. For those of you new to hashtag sports, after every Bills victory, we allow the chat just to say whatever they're going to say about tonight. It's Ryan and myself. Usually it's Mario. And Mario is the one that everybody kind of picks on. I don't really get tagged all that much. So I got to be honest with you. It's kind of like a cushy job for me. I just kind of like hang out with it. It's nice. It's nice. Garn's got some smack to talk about Jalen Ramsey. I certainly don't disagree. Jalen Ramsey, to me, when he went to Miami, everybody talked about it like it was going to be this big thing, but I'm kind of over Jalen Ramsey. I didn't, come on now. He just runs his mouth so much. I'm happy to be done with Jalen Ramsey. Ryan, in our group chat, we have a collection of characters It's you, myself, Mario, our friend Cam, who's done a couple things with hashtag. We have Drew from the Rockpile Report, Icy, who's your RSN buddy, although I never see Icy in there. I never see Icy in there. Spencer German, who we've done a bunch of stuff with in the past. He now does radio in Cleveland. It's a wonderful collection of idiots, I guess I can say. And here we go. Let's see what we got. Honestly, I think this was Mario's best show yet. I could not disagree with any of his opinions tonight. Thank you, Garn. That is a wonderful sentiment. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, he really rebounded after that tweet this morning.
Yeah, right. Man, what can I say? Right? Again, it's the challenges of shared handles. It's what can you do? According to the inside sources, Mario is going on the pup list. That sounds like Mario's getting replaced. I don't know.
Under appreciated moment of tonight. How many flags the Bills had tonight, Paul?
Oh, no, I don't. What, 2?
They had 1 penalty for 5 yards after last week's game. That's a huge step forward.
Didn't they have 3 penalties in 1 drive?
Yeah, 3 false starts in the same drive.
Yeah.
2 back-to-back, I believe.
Brandon makes a point here. He goes, funny thought. The Bills become a run-focused team. They trade Diggs. Diggs goes to Houston. Texans switch to a run-focused team. I heard on the radio today, the guys, and don't get me wrong, right? Like, I don't have a problem with the youth of America, but when I am driving and going to pick up my kid from school and I'm hearing like guys that weren't alive during the Super Bowl years talk about the NFL like they're experts, it is hard for me sometimes. I'm just going to admit that it is hard for me. But Joe Mixon won AFC Player of the Week. He just had like an average day. I was like, what? Joe Mixon,
they said he had an average
ran for like 150 yards. Like he had
159 yards. Yeah. And then he had 3 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. So he had almost 200 all-purpose yards.
Right. And I mean, if you're the Texans, right? I know it's 1 week, but you ride the horse, right? And Mixon has been an underappreciated back. Like he's been underappreciated. He's highly productive. But when your back's having a day like that, you don't mess up that recipe. Why would you? No. Why would you? I mean, the Bills did today, right? They took their foot off the gas with James Cook. He could have had 130 yards rushing today if they wanted him to have it. No. Must be nice. Must be nice to have that control. Be like, hey, James, listen, we know you could have a career day, but we don't need to beat this team by 68 points. So take a break, take a break. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this evening. Thanks, everybody, again, for joining Hashtag Sports. Hit the socials, click the like on this. Of course, leave a comment. I read every single one of them. And
replies to most of them.
I'll do reply to most of them, yeah. And then remember, anything that happens on Twitter, it wasn't me. Like Shaggy, it wasn't me. Thanks again, everybody. Go Bills, and we'll see y'all not Sunday. We'll see you all the following week. Long vacation. We'll have some episodes coming up this week.
Long break.
Talking about the Bills getting ready for that Jacksonville game. And, of course, catch Razor Sharp Picks with Ryan on Wednesday and use that promo code HTAG at betdsi.eu to go get you some money. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you, Paul, as well as the rest of the Hashtag Sports crew. It's an honor being a sponsor. Investing in real estate, especially in the Phoenix metro area, may change your financial picture forever. And it's easier than you may think. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and proud of it. Yet I live in the Valley of the Sun, have for decades, and love it. I also humbly run one of the top real estate teams in Arizona. We help others score, as it were, when it comes to buying, selling, renting, and of course, investing in real estate. I've been a multi-million-dollar producer for many years, and the Mr. Rogers Homes Arizona real estate team has earned the top spot at West USA Realty for 10 years plus. Again, thank you, Hashtag Sports, Go Bills, and God bless America.